now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Representative Carter, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor and privilege of representing the 1st Congressional District of Georgia. That includes the entire coast of Georgia, over 100 miles of pristine coastline that we're very proud of and want to keep clean. And one of the problems we have, of course, is plastics and what's happening. And I know that Dr. Jambak at the University of Georgia is doing extensive research on this, and go Dogs. So thank you for what you're doing. Appreciate that. But this is very important. It's important to our economy. You know, we depend on seafood. We depend on tourism. We depend on our ports. All of that is extremely important. And I also serve on the Select Committee for Climate Change, and I take that very seriously because I think the climate is changing. And I think that we need to do all the things that we can to make sure that we are mitigating and adapting to the changes that are taking place. We're having rising sea levels in the coastal area. We recognize that. Now, how much of it's man-made? That's a topic for another discussion. But it exists and it is happening. I recognize that. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Chrisman, I understand that many of your companies, and in fact some in Georgia, are looking at some innovative projects. For instance, Delta Airlines and Nexus Fuels are doing some very innovative things to reduce waste. Can you share with us some of that?
They are. They're taking used plastics and converting them into jet fuel. So to provide a new opportunity to use that material. Plastics, in many cases, start as energy, start as natural gas. About 70% of plastics in the United States come from natural gas. And the process can take it back to being a fuel in the case of that. But I also talked about other technology. I think this is also a stepping stool to additional technology that will take plastic back into the plastic raw materials that we can make new plastic out of. And a company called Agilix in Oregon is doing that right now with polystyrene, a material that's often thought of as not recyclable. But taking that polystyrene back to styrene, and they can make brand new food grade polystyrene out of it again.
It is amazing to me some of the things that are being done, the innovation that's being done. Cox Enterprises in Georgia has a facility. You're familiar with it? It's in Brantley County in Nahana, where they're taking used tires and actually they bought some equipment from over in Europe, and they're actually taking it and breaking it back down into oil. And to things that they can use like that. It's simply amazing, the innovator. I've always said the greatest innovators, the greatest scientists are right here in the United States of America. That's why I'm excited. I get excited about when we talk about what we're going to be doing in innovation in the future of this country. I think it's going to create a great economy. I think it's going to create a lot of jobs for us. Now, Mr. Chrisman, one of the things, when you mention this about Delta and what they're doing, it's important that we keep the economy strong because we're going to need the private sector helping us with this. This is not going to be a totally public initiative. We need the private sector with this kind of innovation, like I mentioned with Cox Enterprises, like you mentioned with Delta Airlines. And is it important to us, would you agree, that we keep the economy strong so that we have the private sector investing in these type of things?
Absolutely. I think since the China imposed their ban on recyclables, we've seen already $4.2 billion invested in new technologies to recycle and recover plastics, and many of them these advanced recycling technologies like Nexus.
One other thing that I want to mention about Georgia, obviously I'm very proud of our state with good reason. We're the #1 forestry state in the nation as well, and we see a lot of recycling in our paper mills and in our paper products. We do a lot of that. We've recovered fiber to make new paper and paperboard products, and that's certainly something important. There's a lot of confusion about what can and can't be done with recyclables. How important is consumer education, that we continue to make sure consumers understand what we can do and what we can't do? Mr. Johnson, I see you nodding.
Yes, absolutely. The public education and awareness is probably the most important thing we can do right up front, because it tells people what they can and should not put into the bin. if you put in contaminants into the system at the beginning, you damage the material right then and there. It's very, very difficult and often impossible to clean that material, to get it back into a commodity grade material that can be used again. So the public education is very important. The Recycle Act, which is now in the House as well, Mr. Joyce has introduced it. That is a very, very good bill for doing that, getting EPA to develop education programs, public service announcements, and things like that, labeling and just explaining to people what they should and shouldn't put in there, and trying to get rid of some of the confusion that people have.